Hello, Internet. I am live, and we are going to talk about real estate investing today. I'm pretty excited about it. First off, I suppose I'm going to apologize for missing last week. I had a crazy bout of insomnia where I got like 30 minutes of sleep the night before last week, and I realized when I was setting up to do this, my brain could not come up with anything productive or good or coherent to say. So unfortunately, I canceled, but hey, we are live this week, and I'm looking forward to answering all of the questions. So to get started, I would like to go ahead and go over these first two links that I've shared. The first one is to The Wealthy Gardener. That is, in my opinion, one of the best books that have been written probably in the past decade in like the self-improvement, increase your financial position type sector of book writing. Increase your financial position. I don't think that's a category that you'd see walking through Barnes & Noble, but I like the ring of it. And then also a link to PropStream. And this link is for a 7-day free trial of that software. And I use this software a lot to, let's see here, come up with comp reports. I am not a realtor. I do not have the nifty tools of the MLS. Prior to being introduced to PropStream, I largely relied on realtors to send me over comps, and sometimes they were good, sometimes they really weren't. So PropStream really gives you full autonomy to go ahead and create your own comp reports and actually go through and figure out which ones most closely resemble your property or the property in question. And, you know, I think I've shared this before. Recently, we did a package. We purchased a package of about 20 properties, and I came within $2,500 of the actual appraisals that came in on those packages. So I think it's very accurate. I think it's very easy to use. And then it's also fantastic for skip tracing. I've done a lot of that, getting in contact with the owners of properties that I am interested in. So I think it's a really robust software, and I would argue that I probably only use about maybe 10 to 20% of its actual functionality or capabilities. So very underutilized inside of my portfolio. Let's see here, other updates on little old Ryan Ingram. We're back on the buying train, so we're feeling good. We've had some turnovers here lately, probably the most that we've ever had inside of our entire time investing, but that's fun. So I think we have had about 4 or 5 people move out, which is almost equal to or greater than all of the other move outs we've ever done. So I think we've had our portfolio for a little over 3 years now, and I would say until this past month, we've only had maybe 5 or 6 people move out, and now we've got about 4 people moving out right around the same time. So, you know, I think 2 weeks ago now, I was going over the fact that I'm very thankful to have all of our open rehab projects under 10, but if you include turns, I think we're over that again. So that's going to be fun, figuring out and just navigating through that. But I'm excited, especially because some of these, I mean, they moved out, but it's actually in really good shape still. So not much work is going to be needed, probably just cleaning it up. So that's exciting. Let's see, what else? Inside of the Seek Wisdom Mastermind groups, we've had some really solid conversations. Again, the entire reason that I started that was just to help other people build their portfolios and increase their financial position, and that's been a lot of fun. We've been having some really good conversations about the future of the market, what is going to happen, and just we've been having some fun speculating about what that may be and what the best course of action should be. And, you know, because we have no crystal balls, it's very inconclusive. It's very speculative. But I really don't think that foreclosures are going to take the market by storm. I think inventory is too low for that to happen, at least for the next couple of months. I mean, in order for anything to really kind of go off, in my humble opinion, and probably wrong opinion, is interest rates really need to increase dramatically before we see any sort of negative impact on the real estate market. And I say that only because inventory is so low, and a lot of banks are also loosening up their lending. So a lot of people that couldn't qualify previously are able to qualify now, and at better rates. I was encouraged to buy a house, but they don't. First off, good morning, man. Happy to see you back again. To buy a house, but they don't give me a mortgage because lack of credit history, age. I will wait a year. Thanks, man, for your videos and experience. Hope all's well. Yeah, man, that's a real bummer. I'm sorry about that. I think a good friend of mine and the guy that's in the mastermind group, he actually came up with the same thing. So he purchased a 4-unit. And he was able to do that, but he attempted to get a HELOC on the property, and they would not do it pretty much for the same thing. Well, I guess it's slightly different. It was because of how short of a time he owned rental properties. So they did not want to include the rental income in his normal income because of the lack of rental history. I don't even know how to say it. The lack of history owning rental properties. And I think credit is a different story. I did a video on credit a while back, and the only thing that I know, because I hate giving the advice of waiting to people. So, and I'm an extraordinarily impatient individual. So the only thing that I know that may speed up this process is if you have somebody that you really trust that has good credit, you can kind of piggyback off of their credit. So if you can, for instance, let's say a good friend of yours has good credit and he has a really long credit history, he can add you as an authorized signer on one of his credit cards that is pretty old. And by doing that, you will be able to also get credit for how old that credit card is. So whenever I kind of mess up my credit, I was able to resolve the situation, fortunately. But whenever that happened, I was able to get added onto some cards. And I think the oldest card that I have is from the 80s at this point. And obviously I wasn't alive in the 80s. So it works. It's a good strategy. It's called piggybacking. You could probably YouTube that and come up with something good. But that might be able to speed up the process just a little bit if it's just like the age of your credit. Other than that, I think you're right. I think waiting might be your only option, as much as it pains me to say that. Good morning, Tolu. I appreciate you being on here. I'm really looking forward to hearing how things are going for you. I feel like a horrible person. I normally am able to remember these things. Did you close on the property yet? I guess it's only been 3 weeks maybe since you hit that awesome base hit. And I almost feel like I asked you this 2 weeks ago as well. So I apologize if I'm asking you to repeat yourself. Also, on this note, I'd like to say that the first 2 years of our business was very difficult. So for the first 2 years, it was really, really difficult for us to get any sort of loans based on our rental properties, because they did not want to consider our rental properties as income because they viewed it as a new business venture, and they wanted to see 2 years track record of us being able to own properties well before they would consider our rental income as real income, which is standard across all banks. But that's what really led me to learning more about creative financing and going down that rabbit hole. So if traditional financing is not available to you, then you can get pretty creative. And there are a lot of people on YouTube that talk about, creative financing, seller financing, utilizing other people's money, friends and family. Let's see here. I think if you want to raise private money from friends and family, then, man, I forget his name. Matt Faircloth, I think is his name. He wrote a book. It's under the Bigger Pockets Publishing, and I think it's called, man, I know this. I've read the book. Raising Private Capital, maybe is the name of the book. Raising Private Equity, something like that. But it's a very good resource as far as learning the ins and outs of the avenues available to people to lend to you outside of the normal like 401ks and IRAs and whatnot. So that's a good read. And then I know I've done a few videos on creative financing. If I remember right, they're like the black and yellow thumbnail. I think it's a black background with like bold yellow text. And I think there's a little series where I try to juxtapose how to build a real estate portfolio if you have like a good W-2 and you're a very bankable individual, and then how you go about building a real estate portfolio if you are not a bankable person and you do not have a W-2 job. So it can be done, and there are a lot of people that have done so very successfully. So that would definitely be worth looking into. I'm the first generation of immigrants in my family, so I don't have strong relationship with anybody in the USA. That makes sense. That makes sense. I don't know, man. Perhaps you could leverage the relationships outside of the U.S. and kind of make it appealing to your friends and family back home that investing in real estate inside the U.S. might be a good idea and a good place to put their money. I know a few people, I'm not saying they do it well, I just know a few people that they live out of country and they spend a lot of their time raising capital inside of their home country and then deploying the money here in the Midwest because properties are just so cheap. So that might be an available option. I don't know. It really depends on what your day normally looks like, how much free time you have, how badly you want to get into real estate investing, and the lengths that you're willing to go in order to kind of build a real estate portfolio. Because the more we get into this, the more I see it's very much so a long-term game. I think if you have a very strong W-2 income, then you can make, quote unquote, passive money pretty quickly on real estate investing. But just like the grind of getting a portfolio up and running, I don't think it's necessarily possible, at least on paper, to both show profit and expand your portfolio at the same time on paper. Awesome. Man, Tolu, I'm excited. Close on Wednesday. That's awesome. Super cool. Appraised for 160. Did you buy this for 180 or 165? I'm also an immigrant. I had to wait 2 years. It's hard to work around it. Banks want to see that history, but don't quit. Keep saving. I just bought my second house. That's awesome. Tolu, I'm so proud of you. That's awesome. $5,000 of equity. That's really cool. So I guess you bought it for 155. Yeah, that's so cool. Awesome. And then that's going to rent out for like $1,500 a month as well, right? Super cool. Yeah, that's awesome. I think one of my favorite ways to think about buying real estate, especially the way that you purchased this one, 155. Sure, you've only got $5,000 worth of equity now, but as soon as that property gets rented out, yeah, $1,200 a month, that's going to cover the mortgage. It really becomes like a saving account. I mean, the more that you pay down that principal, and it's already appraised for more than you've paid for it. So that $5,000 of equity is only going to increase. So it's really cool. It's kind of like, people put money into 401ks on a monthly basis in hopes that it is one day a large amount, but it's really tough to like visualize, and you have to like use formulas and best guesses and historical data to figure out how much it might be. But when it comes to real estate, especially if they're like 30-year fixed loans, then man, how much is going to be yours if you just carry out that loan to its normal life. So, 155,000, I don't know how much, I'm not going to try to do the math offhand, but super cool. If the loan is like 120 grand, then that in 30 years, if you just make that payment on a monthly basis, which the tenant will do for you, then in 30 years, you're going to have a home worth at least 120 grand owned free and clear over the next 30 years. Not to mention the cash flow, the appreciation, the tax benefits, super exciting stuff. And that's why I really think, my personal position is that real estate is like the original, like tax shelter, right? So before 401ks were a real thing, that kind of brought similar tax benefits to like equities, like the stocks and whatnot, more liquid type investments. Really benefits Wall Street for sure, but you're really hard pressed to replace real estate. Yep. Yeah, that 2-year history is really tough. And because we are past it by almost 2 years at this point, this August is going to be our 4th year of investing in real estate. And because of how quickly we've grown, because of how fast everything is moving, it's easy for me to forget the pains of the first 2 years and not having any of the banks take us seriously. So as soon as the bank started taking us seriously, it made a world of difference in how we went about acquiring properties. So I'm very thankful for that. And it gets easier and it gets a lot better. I think when you get really close to that 2-year mark, I think the only thing that I know that kind of is just a little bit of a hiccup is, and some banks are able to work through this. Other banks have conniption fits trying to figure it out. But if you own your first rental property in your personal name, and then you start an LLC, then sometimes the bank's knee-jerk reaction is, well, we need 2 years worth of tax returns on the LLC before we start lending money to you with loans under the name of that LLC. So I think it's a small thing. It's not a big deal. And let me put my disclaimer up here because I never know anything that I'm talking about. But I think one of the things that I would suggest is whenever you're able, transfer, do like a quit claim deed. If the property's in your personal name, do a quit claim deed over to your LLC. That way, when you file your taxes, that LLC will show rental income for a certain period of time. However, I would say you probably should not do that if your bank has any sort of due on sale clause. I would ask the loan originator if the bank has any history of enforcing the due on sale clause as well. Generally, they're pretty forthright about that. But even if they say that since they've been there, they've never seen anybody enforce that due on sale clause, it's still, in their back pocket. That does not mean that they're not going to do it in the future. Hey, uh, I would butcher your name. I don't wanna. I don't wanna try. It took me. It took me years. That was a little bit of an exaggeration. It took me several weeks to get comfortable saying Tolu, and even that Tolu is an abbreviation. Thanks for adding great value to people. I'm glad to be identified with this community. I'm a newbie, local investors, and I must confess it's tough. I'm a newbie, local investors. Yeah, it is. It's really hard. But I guess starting and learning anything is really difficult and takes like hours of research. I would say I did. I left law enforcement in April of 2017, and I bought the first rental in August of 2017. I did, and that entire time between April and August, I was consuming all of the content that I possibly could on a daily basis, just to like learn the ropes. And back then, I had absolutely no idea. And I would say, of all the knowledge out there on real estate, I still have a very, very small percentage of understanding uh, of how everything really works. Probably lesser than 1% still. I can navigate. I can piece things together when I learn them, but there's just so many nuances and caveats of, you know, this industry, and it's a lot to take in. So I think when you're learning and when you're starting out, the biggest thing that you should probably do is figure out what type of real estate investing you really want to focus on, what your personal preference is. I think the most common one is, do you want to invest in single family homes? Do you want to invest in small multifamilies? Do you want to invest in larger apartment complexes? Do you want to do storage units or hotels? And figuring out, I don't think, I mean, sure, there might be some like differences of return on investment, but probably very slightly of like the ROI. I would say for the most part, each avenue of investing in real estate has its own unique pros and cons list. And it's really just trying to figure out and taking an educated guess at what type of cons list you would most prefer to deal with. And this is very much so an overgeneralization, but one of the reasons that I prefer single family homes is that I never get any complaints about, the neighbors and the units next door. And I'm sure if I owned apartment complexes that were larger than 4 units, at some point that would probably die down and become, more of a non-issue. But with the 2, 3, and 4 unit buildings that we own, I feel like at least every other month we're fielding complaints about the way other people are living inside of that unit, or not the unit, but that building alongside them. So I do not like dealing with those issues at all. So consequently, that's a con that I prefer not to deal with of multifamilies. And that further draws me in to the single family side of things. Timmy, like with an I, but with an E. Tammy. Trying to think of all the ways I know how to say E. Timmy. Good morning. How and what can I check before I buy a house and sheriff and any auctions? Thank you. Peace for all. Welcome back, man. I appreciate you regularly coming back. Let's see here. This is tough because when things go up for the sheriff sale, it is very difficult to have much information at all on them. You're not allowed interior access of the building. Sometimes they're still occupied. So snooping around is always a little bit awkward. Now, I've got some baggage on my shoulders from my days in law enforcement. So I really dislike, now that I'm out of law enforcement, I really dislike walking around like the perimeter of a house, peeking in windows. It just doesn't appeal to me. I'm fighting a sneeze at the moment. I got distracted because I was playing in my head. Should I mute the mic? Should I blank out my screen? But all this thinking through it, the sneeze went away. So yeah, I really don't like snooping around like the perimeter of buildings. Curtilage, the curtilage is what it was called in like law enforcement, based on some crazy old archaic laws on the books. But yeah, I don't like doing that, but that is probably the best thing that you could do in order to try to ascertain like what the inside of the house is like. Generally, if you can tell by either the electrical box or the gas meter if it's off, then that's a good indication that the property is likely unoccupied. Here in Montgomery County, DP&L, Dayton Power and Light, they do red tags if it was turned off for non-payment, and yellow tags if it was turned off at the resident's request, and green tags if the service is still on. And then on the gas meters, there's just one little area, like one little valve you can look at and see if it's on or off. And generally, if it's turned off by the gas company, then they will put a little like locking mechanism in the closed position so that valve cannot be turned back on. So I would look for those. And if you can kind of determine from afar that the property is unoccupied, or at least it does not have utilities, I guess some people are known to live inside of homes without utilities, then I think I would be just a little bit more comfortable snooping around the perimeter of the house, looking for windows that, you know, allow you to see the interior. But it's really, and probably always will be, because before the auction, it's not like the sheriff has permission or any ownership or any ability to like show the house. So you're never really going to have access to the interior, which is where a lot of the damage is. You can assess the exterior pretty well. Doesn't need a new roof, doesn't need any new siding, windows, doors. You can see all that stuff, but you can't see the mechanicals. You can't see the flooring. You can't see what kind of shape the walls are in, the ceilings. There's generally a lot of the sheriff sales that I've had. There's always been like one or two holes in the ceiling from water damage or whatnot. And then you also really can't tell how soft that subfloor is. So you don't know. It could look fine and straight from the windows when you look in, but then you get around the kitchen sink or the toilet, and it's real mushy, real soft. So I always generally, yeah, that's not a real thing. For the most part, whenever I'm looking at a property on an auction list, in my head, I assume that it will need all of the things on the interior. And when I first started this, you could rehab an entire interior of a home for about 25 grand. I think now it's closer to 40, maybe 45 grand, just because, you know, especially if you have to redo the subfloor. Well, OSB has gone from like $8 a sheet to like $50 per sheet. It's pretty bananas out there at the moment. So things are getting very serious. How about if there's a lien on the house? How can I check? That's a good question, and it's one of the most common questions. I guess I should probably create a video about that. I address it slightly in a couple videos, but I never really drive this point home. And that is that I think one of the best things that you can do is form a good relationship with a title company, one that you trust, one that understands what your real estate investing strategy is, and just forming personal relationships with the people inside of that title company that really has your back. So when you're looking at properties on auction websites or at the sheriff sales, you are not liable. The liens are not your responsibility. When you win a property at a bid, this is true for Montgomery County, you would have to clarify with either an attorney or title companies in your area. But one of the only, probably actually the only reason that you could back out of buying a property at a sheriff sale or on an auction site is if the title cannot be transferred in a clean manner. So at that point, you can probably back out and even get whatever sort of deposit or whatnot you had back. So even if you buy a property at a sheriff's sale, you should always close through the title company. And the sheriff's sale, at least here, they give you a couple weeks for the title to come back, and the title company will be in touch with, all the right people at the sheriff's sale to coordinate the closing whenever title comes back good. If there are any issues, then the title company and the sheriff people will sort that out. So it's not something that's on you. It will always be on them. And then you should always, 100% of the time, purchase title insurance on all of the properties that you ever purchase. And title insurance will protect you. Let's say in this circumstance, either the title company misses one of the liens that are on the property. So shortly after you buy the property at a sheriff's sale, close through the title company. Let's say somebody is notified that the deed's been transferred. Then any of these like mechanical liens or whatnot, they will reach out to you. And I've had it happen a couple of times. They'll reach out to you and attempt to collect money from you. Well, if the title company missed that, then the title insurance will cover you for, generally it's right around the purchase price of the property. So all of the times that has happened to me, the title company has given me a call and said, no action is needed on your part, but we wanted to let you know that somebody came forth with like a mechanical lien on the property that you just purchased. We're taking care of it. You have title insurance and it will be covered. And that's generally the last I hear about it. I don't know if it's paid off. I think that's probably the only way that they go away or otherwise, settled. So title insurance is always necessary because you're right. The last thing you want to do is buy a property with a massive lien on it and be responsible for that as well. So that's my answer on that one. Yeah, I'm going to write that down. Thanks, Peace for All. I'll even mention you. It's going to be the title of the video, maybe. Always buy title insurance. I know I've been saying this for several weeks now, and I'm trying. I think whenever the guy that we hired to be a project manager comes on board, I will be fresh out of excuses as to why I can't make videos regularly again. I do miss it, and this channel is starting to feel the weight of the lack of new content. So, yeah. That's kind of one of those things that if I'm serious about this, if I'm serious about helping you guys, then I should probably start creating videos on a daily basis again. So, hey, here's my email address, and you guys hold me accountable. If you don't see a new video from me in the next couple of days, then start blowing me up and start being like, man, Ryan, you're really letting us down. You're the world's worst YouTuber. Let's see. Ryan, can you help with the list of team member one need to work with before and after purchase of a post foreclosure? So a post foreclosure, that means the foreclosure's already happened. So it is already owned by someone, either a bank, somebody, a realtor that's just, selling the property as is. So at that point, it would be no different than any other purchase or transaction. So generally, when people speak of a team, let me get out my sheet of paper so I can think clearly rather than trying to keep all this in my head. Team. So a title company, of course, is the first one. And whenever you are purchasing a property, you are the one that's paying for the title company. So this is one area in all of my real estate transactions that I really put my foot down. I do not let people convince me to close at any other title company than the one that I want to work with. And the reason for that largely is because I'm the one paying for everything. And since, especially when you start scaling, just because I believe, in having relationships with the people that you do business with, rather than just, treating people as commodities, but rather, you know, um, building long lasting business relationships with people, I close at the same title company all the time, and it makes my life significantly easier. So always voice your opinion when it comes to title companies. A lot of these realtors, because most people are not real estate investors, most people only close, on a personal home or two or three throughout their entire life, right? And generally, if they close on multiple, it's in different areas. So they don't really care like what title company they work with. And some of these realtors get kickbacks from title companies for bringing them business. And, they have their professional relationships. So I'm sure there's a lot of like whining and dining going on in the background, but don't let realtors push you around or act like, well, this is, this real estate company always uses this title company. It's like, well, that's cool. You guys can, but for me and this transaction, we will be using this other company. So that's something that you should always have a very, very firm opinion on once you find the title company that you want to work with. So I would say the first person that you should have is a phenomenal title company. I know some of the people, when they talk about building a team, mention having an attorney. I think you should have an attorney just for general life purposes. But I got to admit, whenever I got into real estate investing, I did not have an attorney. I did not have someone that I regularly spoke with because it just wasn't important. I didn't necessarily have too much money that I was attempting to protect. And, now, in my opinion, I was just, so most people don't have an attorney that are in the beginning stages of building their little like real estate empire, so to speak. And for the most part, most title companies have like an in-house attorney that they use to draft up like mortgages and whatnot. And if you don't have an attorney, I would say that's likely a good place to start. And the attorney will, review anything that the title company asks them to. So I would not put attorney on this list until you are ready and you feel like you've got enough at risk to really, I want to say necessitate, but I really don't think that's a word. Just sounds funny. To make an attorney necessary. That's how I'll say it. So I will not be putting attorney on this list. A CPA, you should always have a very good CPA. And then a lot of people put realtor on this list as well. And I think that's up to you. I think if you are putting in the groundwork, if you're reading all the books, if you are doing your own research on the area, if you are forming a strong network of other investors in the local area, I don't necessarily think that a realtor would be like too valuable of an asset. I have a realtor that I use pretty regularly. I'm not opposed. He would be sad to hear me say this. I'm not opposed to using other realtors. Generally, my kind of rule of thumb is whenever I see a property that I'm interested in, I will reach out to the listing agent, especially in this market where the prices are very, very low. It's hard for me to justify asking the realtor that I normally use to go above and beyond to help me get some additional information on this house that I'm planning on, putting a $30,000 offer in, because 3% of 30,000 is like $900. And there's like a, 50-50 shot as to whether or not I'll actually purchase it. So best case scenario, he gets $900. Worst case scenario, he works for free. So I think that's like, just in my experience, since I do own an insurance agency, I would say the biggest caution when you're attempting to form a team is that you need to recognize that most of these people work on a commission basis, and they only have so much time in their day to explain or have these same like introductory conversations with potential clients. So I think there's a significant amount of conversation that needs to happen in order to really feel strongly of your quote unquote team, but at the same time, be respectful of their time and do your best not to demand too much of them, because they likely work on some sort of commission basis. So title company, CPA, maybe a realtor if you're into that thing. And then I would definitely say wholesalers. But when it comes to both realtors and wholesalers, I would say the more you have in your corner, the more you have constantly looking for deals for you, the better off you're going to be. I would not, while I do think that loyalty is extraordinarily important, I would say I would not place an emphasis on using the same realtor or the same wholesaler regularly. Just the one realtor that I have that I do use regularly, the reason for that is every realtor I've ever worked with, they act like they want to sell me a lot of properties once they realize that I love buying properties. And so they are like, hey, what's your buying criteria? I'll set you up on an alert for the MLS. So, and I tell everybody my exact buying criteria. And of all the realtors that I've ever told this to, I have only had one realtor ever come back with me with additional properties to buy on multiple occasions. And that's the fellow that, because he always puts in the work, because he has alerts set up on my behalf. So most realtors will set up the little MLS alerts to notify me and send me an email each time something that fits my criteria pops up on the MLS. What this fellow does is he actually has all the alerts sent to him. And from there, he's got a good enough feel for what I do or do not want that he will actually sort them out for me. And he will only text me with properties that he thinks I'd be interested in. And he makes it very personal, not just like the generic MLS email. So he puts in a lot of work, and I'm very appreciative of that. And because of that, whenever I have the opportunity to show loyalty, I do to him. But for the most part, I would say my rule of thumb is realtors and wholesalers, the more the merrier. So wholesalers would be number 4 on my list. And then I think probably the most important, so I'm going to go ahead and say that this list is not in any particular order, is you really need to have a local mentor or at least a network of other real estate investors in your same market. And the reason I say that is most markets are so street by street, and most markets have their own quirks that other real estate investors just are completely unaware of. Like, every municipality is different. The requirements, the things that title companies do, the standards when putting offers on a property differ from market to market. So I would definitely put a very strong emphasis on finding a mentor, somebody that has a portfolio the size that you're looking to build in the area that you're looking to build. I would say that's of like utmost importance. And then forming a good relationship with them and making it like a real win-win. Make sure that you always provide more value than what you're requesting of the people once they enter your network. So be very mindful of that. So that's number 5. REI network /mentor. So I'm going to type that in here because I think that was a really good question. Man, I have been talking about that forever, and that was the last question. You guys are quiet today, but it's probably, honestly, to be fair, the 13 of you that are on here have probably also been on here for the past several months. So maybe we're to the point where you have asked most of your questions. My keyboard does not work well anymore. I don't know what happened. It's a MacBook. It has been getting very hot lately. And because of that, I feel like some of the sensors under these keys are melting a little bit. It's a real gamble. Each time I need to use the I or the S, I'll get anywhere between 0 to 5 of them. So my words per minute that I can type has gone from like 100 plus to 10. Really got to mind those I's and S's. Good morning, A plus. Man, I appreciate you being on here. You're the man. I'm sure you're on the DIY land bank thing. So did you see that property on Ryburn that just came up for like 29,000? It's a 4-unit, 1 bed, 1 bath. Needs everything, but there's a potential 100 grand worth of equity there to whoever wants to flip it. Don't know. All right, Timmy, that is my answer. That's who I think needs to be on your team. Number 3 and 4, the more the merrier. And these are in no particular order. These are just the notes that I took. So if you do not have strong relationships in either of those, and you know what? Because I am an insurance agent, I forgot to put insurance. Number 6, insurance person. There we go. Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. And for an insurance person, you are likely going to want to work with an independent agent, somebody that has the ability to represent multiple insurance companies. That way, you know, if you go to like somewhere like a State Farm or an Allstate, they're called captive insurance companies. And you know, hey, you guys do whatever you want to. I'm not, you know, suggesting that those are not good people. But the problem is, if you are building a relationship for people to be on your team for a very long time, if you build a relationship with a captive agent, let's say State Farm or Allstate decide to like really raise their rates, or decide that they no longer want to write insurance on rental properties because in insurance, they call it a hard market. When the economy crashes, they call it a hard market. Or when people are losing, when one market is suffering because of a significant amount of losses or whatnot. That's their terminology for it. So in a hard market, a lot of these insurance companies, that rental properties are one of the first things to go out of their appetite, is what it's called. So if you have a relationship with an independent insurance agent, okay, let me finish my previous thought. If you form a relationship with that, and if the Allstate or State Farm insurance company decides that they no longer want to mess with rental properties, or they want to increase their premiums, then what happens is you now have to go out and look for a new insurance person, because State Farm and Allstate, all they can provide you with are insurance policies from State Farm or Allstate. So it's not necessarily a good fit, because then you're going to have to go start all over with a new relationship with another insurance person. If you were to form a relationship with an independent agent and they have access to multiple insurance companies, then if one insurance company decides that they do not want to either write insurance on specific rental properties or take premium increases, then they have the ability to immediately shop around with other insurance companies, and they would provide that same coverage. The relationship would be able to transcend you switching from one insurance company to another. So it's just more of a long-term, flexible relationship than with that of a captive. Let's see here. Right now, I am listening to a book called Die Trying. That's by a guy named Bo Parfet, Parfet. Here's another one, The Common Path to Uncommon Success. And let's see. I've read it before, but another one that I'm reading is by, and it's actually back here on my bookshelf. Tommy Breedlove wrote a book called Legendary, Living a Legendary Life, rereading that one. And Don Winner also wrote a book called Building an Elite Organization. I'm in the middle of reading that one as well. So Those are all the things. The book that I'm reading by Beau Parfait, Die Trying, uh, I think the subtitle is like One Man's Quest to Conquer the Seven Summits or something like that. It's all about mountain climbing, and he's a pretty successful fella, and he is just relaying all of his hard lessons learned mountain climbing to that of leadership inside of corporate America. And it's pretty cool. And I mean, he's got some pretty tough stories. Like a lot of people died on his quests of climbing mountains. So I personally, listening to that, I find myself thinking often, like, why in the world are you putting yourself in that situation? Like, apparently there are these things called crevasses that you have to traverse across just on your way to the mountain. So even before you get to the mountain, just like the flat, so to speak, hike is full of gaps. These crevasses are like gaps in the glaciers that you're walking on that are sometimes, hundreds of feet deep. And there's like running water there. So if somebody falls in a crevasse, they're gone for good. There's a couple different ways that you can attempt to save people, but the chance of that happening is very slim. So shout out to Beau for wanting to do that in the first place. And I mean, he even identifies it in his book of, he just got a thrill out of being about almost dying, and it made him feel very alive. So he just did it a lot. I would never do that though. But one thing that I decided when I was very young is I decided that I was never going to put myself in a situation where if I died, my dad would be very disappointed in me. So, my dad's a very conservative fella as far as like adventurous things go. So consequently, I am as well. I would hate to go bungee jumping. It'd go wrong. And my dad just shake his head and say, why was he even doing that in the first place? Skydiving, also off the table. Pretty much any of those thrill-seeking type things, I'm out. Do you have a morning routine? I used to. Before, man, honestly, I got hit really hard with a couple of different things early this year that really I would say you can like look at the YouTube channel and figure out when my routine kind of got messed up, right? So the first thing that happened was in December, we had our fourth kid, which was awesome. Very thankful for that. The second thing that happened in early January is I messed up my back from an injury that I had when I was like 14, not doing anything crazy, just playing racquetball. I really hurt my back and I lost my ability to walk for like 2 weeks. And that affected me mentally way more than I gave it credit for. So I've been just trying to get back to the place I was mentally because, man, I couldn't walk for like 2 weeks and that made me feel very humbled. I was invincible before that happened. So just mentally working through that has been really difficult. And when I first got back and like started walking and driving around again, I mean, I could only be up for a couple of months. I could only be like upright for a very short amount of time. So I am now feeling good, and I am now trying to get back into the swing of things. So I'm now trying to re-up my game and get back to being like 100% again. And I mentioned my son because, yeah, that fourth kid, very much so. We both, my wife and I both, underestimated how much work that fourth one was going to add. So I would say even before I messed up my back, my amount of productivity on a daily basis was decreased by maybe like 50%. So after we had our fourth kid, which again, I can only use that as an excuse for so long. And I've passed the point of that being a reasonable excuse. But yeah, I would say it cut my productivity in half easily. This is also a good question. She used to be. So when we first started, I would never buy a property until we went to it together and she approved of it. And our philosophy was we would not buy any properties that we would not live in ourselves. And we still have that philosophy. Now we have messed up, and I do own a couple that we would never, under any circumstances, live in. But now, like right now, she is really focused on raising our kids because when she used to go around to all the properties, we had one kid. But as many of you know, we have been having children on at a rapid fire pace. So our kids are 18 months. This is how much time is between them. 18 months, 15 months, and 13 months apart, and we have 4 of them. So my oldest is 4, and then there are there are 3 younger ones. So now, like 24/7, she is being Mother of the Year. So once they start school, which is going to happen, this kind of made me sad. My son's about to start preschool later this year. And then it's going to be at a rapid fire pace. They're all going to be at school. So soon she's going to be back and helping us with the real estate stuff. But right now, not so much. Good morning, Veronica. Thanks for coming back. I really appreciate it. Do you do any affirmations? Probably not in the traditional sense. No. I don't know why I said it that way. Probably not in any sort of non-traditional sense either. I'm one of these people that are motivated intrinsically, like the desire to do a really good job just kind of comes naturally, and I'm constantly like assessing myself as to like how I'm performing versus what I believe my potential is. And what I believe my potential is probably extraordinarily arrogant, if I were to, if I were to say it out loud, right? So, like just the way that I explained the fact that I think my productivity was decreased by like 50% with the 4th kid, and then even more so when I lost my ability to walk. I would say that pretty much this entire year, I've been operating at like 10 to 15% of what I'm actually capable of. So I would say that I'm in a little bit of a rut, that I'm working myself out at the moment. I'm not necessarily taking to any affirmations, but I'm very much so motivated by mortality and realizing that life is extraordinarily short. So I get a little bit frustrated with myself and down on myself if I feel like I am wasting such a scarce resource, that being time. So very cognizant of that, keep that front of mind all the time, and just gauge myself between performance and potential on a regular basis. Before the routine, I was waking up at 4, getting into the office, and I would make a YouTube video, post it, release it. I think I released it at like 9 a.m. every day. From there, I would go around. Generally, I would be done with that by like 7, and I would go around to all the properties that we had under rehab and make sure all the contractors had everything they needed. When I got back to the office, generally around 10 or 11, I would hammer out all of the emails and whatnot. And at some point during that morning, I also worked out. Yeah, between the YouTube video and the checking on contractors. And then, yeah, from there, also just looking for additional properties to buy and networking with potential investors. Thanks, Timmy. Yeah, man, I think the first one, I think it's really cool. I like it a lot. I love having kids. The first one's definitely a shocker, but my wife and I, behind closed doors, do get a good kick out of all the people that complain about how difficult that first kid is. but we got a chip on our shoulder, right? Good morning. Thanks for your content. When I buy my first rental property, should I already have an LLC or should it be in my name? That's up to you and the bank. If you're going to buy it outright, it's 100% your decision. If you're going to buy it outright, I would likely go ahead and put it in an LLC. If you plan on getting a mortgage on it at any given point, then I would likely go ahead and put it in your personal name and keep it there. I would say on your first property, unless you are somebody that has an extraordinarily high income or already high net worth, I would say that for your first property, it being in an LLC or your personal name is almost a moot point. I think a lot of people, it's good to know legal structure. It's good to talk to an attorney, get their opinions, do your own research, of course. But at the end of the day, I think I really think that there are a lot of people that spend way too much time thinking about legal structure and all the pros and cons of it before they actually accumulate anything, like worth protecting. I know that sounds a little bit harsh, but everybody has their own like risk tolerance. I have clients on the insurance side. Some of them have hundreds of properties in one LLC. Others have, hundreds of properties in their personal name. Others have one LLC per property, and each property is deeded in a land trust with a different LLC as the beneficiary of each one. It really depends on your risk tolerance. There's no right or wrong. At one point, a couple of years ago, I set out to write a book. Right after I wrote my book on rental property insurance, the next most common question that I get when I'm speaking with people about insurance, even though I'm not an attorney, people just wanted to ask the question about legal structure and what's safest. And I think if you were to, hold on, let me finish my thought. I'm getting ahead of myself. I wrote a book. I tried to write a book on it. So in my research, I really realized that it really comes down to the individual's financial position and their own preference. Other than that, the sky's the limit. And I think if you were to get an attorney and an insurance agent in a room, the attorney would attempt to divide out all of your assets in as many separate entities as possible without being absurd. And the insurance agent would make sure that each of these entities had the appropriate amount of insurance so that in the event of a lawsuit, the insurance would be able to cover a higher amount than the underlying assets. That way, in order for you to be, sued and actually realize any devastation from that, so to speak, your insurance company would cover an absurd amount. Do you buy occupied rental homes? I do. And that is one of our current pain points that we are working through. So we are trying our absolute best to be the most efficient and effective property management company out there. And we do some crazy things that are unorthodox in the way that historically rental properties are managed. One of those being we do not accept phone calls. We are not designed to answer phone calls or even return phone calls. Almost our entire start to finish, our leasing, our maintenance, our rent payment, everything is designed to either be via text or via the online portal that we provide. So when we place a resident, if we buy a property that it's vacant and we put somebody inside it because they found us on the internet, because they filled out their application via our portal, because they have been in communication with us via text message, because we've built that rapport, right? They trust our systems and processes. They know that if they put in a work order, it's going to be handled promptly. All of those things. It's a very smooth process. when we buy properties where people have lived there for any length of time, people hate change. It's in human nature, right? And I get it. If I lived in a home and it was sold, there's a slight bit of like invasiveness that's felt. However, however right or wrong that is, right? So it is so difficult for us to convince a resident that we inherit that we are not available by phone, that if they want to interact with it, if there's something wrong, they need to utilize their online portal. There's nowhere they can send a money order. There's nowhere they can drop off cash. There's nobody that's going to come out to meet them at their property to collect payment. It has to be done via the online portal. People don't like hearing things like that. And I think all of the issues that we have had from a management perspective have stemmed from us not. Uh, I'm not going to blame them because I'm empathetic to the whole situation, but I think all of the issues that we experience with the properties that we buy, or as a management company, come from the properties that we buy occupied. They've been calling their landlord for the past decade on the first of every month, and he would stop by their house and pick up the check or the money order by the third of every month. It's like, well, that's not how we're going to do things. That's no longer an option for you. People just have a very difficult time either accepting or liking that. So, yes, we do buy properties occupied, and it is a pain point that we are trying to do a better job at expressing our empathy to the situation on the front end to make people feel not so angry. Oh. I don't know. If you guys have any good ideas, let me know. In Texas, the seller picks a title company. Man, Texas does everything backwards, don't they? And bigger and more backwards. I guess in Texas, the seller is also the one that pays for their closing. Is that right? It's probably because of our price point. I think if the market were higher and it were more of a buyer's market, then probably the sellers would pay for the closing costs. In that case, the seller would likely pick the title company. Maybe that's how it is. So I would describe myself as a very conservative person that does not take many risks at all. But everybody around me adamantly disagrees with that and describes me as being one of the most risk tolerant people that they know. So the reason I don't consider it risk is just because I do a painful amount of research on most things. And before I go doing anything, I've got, a couple of days worth of research behind me and come up with a moderately decent plan, at least based on my research as to how I'm going to execute something. And I have talked to at least a couple of people that have already done the thing it is that I'm trying to do. So by the time I make an action, I think it's a good idea and very conservative based on the information at hand. But to the people that haven't been right next to me while I've been doing that research say, whoa, that's a major turn. I am not in the business of losing money. I am not in the business of gambling. I am not in the business of taking risks just to take risks because the potential payoff is greater than the potential loss, right? In my head, I mitigate all potential losses in hopes of accumulating phenomenal returns. So that's how I would describe my risk tolerance. Have you ever thought about going into commercial multifamily? What are your thoughts on commercial multifamily? I have not really thought about it. I have a very strong preference to single family homes. I think I would likely be okay with getting into like a very large multifamily project. maybe like 30 to 50 units plus. I would be more interested in doing that than the 5 to 20 something unit buildings. I think if I were to get into commercial multifamily, I would want to get a complex so large that there are on site leasing people and use it as a hub for having on site management and then using those people to also manage the surrounding single family portfolio. The problem, though, is you're familiar with Dayton. We really, in the area that we're attempting to invest in, we really do not have those type of complexes or communities around. Most of like the larger complexes or whatever are actually just like a cluster of 4 unit buildings. We have entire streets, blocks of like 4 units, but not really any big complexes. So our first priority is to make a really big difference in the community that we're investing in and cleaning that up. I think we're likely going to get into like commercial retail space or commercial mixed use space just to improve those types of buildings in the area to increase the overall curb appeal of that section of town. But because the area that we're invested in is already built out pretty well, it's not like there's any openings of land in order to build commercial multifamily. So because of all those reasons, I haven't put too much thought into it. Now, on the other hand, if you were to gift me all of the abandoned commercial space near downtown, then I would likely knock it all down and build some sort of mixed use community with retail, office, and residential space, and below the building parking. Because a lot of the areas that we're in, commercial space is really kind of bottlenecked because there's never any good parking because the area was developed in like the 10s and 20s. What do you look for when viewing an occupied potential buy? Same things as I do when I'm looking at a not buy. I mean, whether it is or isn't occupied is not necessarily factored in my criteria. Like later today, I'm going and looking at a property for $52,000. It is currently occupied at $750 per month. From the pictures, it looks like there is not any deferred maintenance. So if there is no deferred maintenance, then $52,000 is a fair price, whether it's occupied or not occupied. If I get there and I see that the roof has, 2 or 3 layers, then I would look at negotiating the price down or walking away from the deal. If I see that there is any sort of deferred maintenance that would take the all-in price over, 60,000, then we're going to have then that would, cause me to seriously renegotiate that deal. Generally, if you can buy a property at a discount, so if a property is occupied, but the rent is grossly under market, then you're also going to get a discount on the property. And if it's grossly under market, then that tells you 2 things. It's been mismanaged and there's likely a lot of deferred maintenance on there and the tenant is very long-term. So to me, that is comparable to buying a property with like $20,000 to $30,000 worth of deferred maintenance in it. So the purchase price needs to be congruent with purchase price plus repairs lesser than 75% of the after repair value. So long as the purchases fit that criteria, purchase price plus repairs equal to or lesser than 75% ARV, it's something that I'm willing to buy. And I will walk away if it doesn't fit that, and I will negotiate until it does fit that, whether it's occupied or not. And I would say because rents have gone up so much inside of whatever it is that this economy is going through, um, I would say most places that come occupied are currently under rent, unless somebody like A Plus got a hold of it and renovated the property and put really, really high paying residents in to make it look very appealing for out of state investors or just looking to command top dollar for a cash flowing income property. What's up, man? I'm happy to see you on here. That's cool. Thanks for being on here, man. I miss North Carolina a little bit. Buyer pays for closing. Tolu, I think Texas is getting over on you. Good morning. How are those Dayton house values going? Do you see higher rents up there? Yes. Rents have increased tremendously up here. So when I first started, I think it was $550 for a 1-bed, $650 for a 2-bed, $750 for a 3-bed. I thought I was hot stuff when I finished my first couple of rehab projects that were 2 bedrooms, and I was getting $750 out of them. Now I think we've got a lot of 2 bedrooms that we are pushing, $850 for, and our 3 bedrooms we're pushing like $950 for. I've got a 4 bedroom on the market that's getting a lot of applications currently for $1,100 per month. So that's really cool. And then we rented out another, the 5 bedroom, the firehouse, for $1,200 per month. So yeah, rents are increasing a lot, and it's really fun to see. Now, similarly, so are the housing prices. So it's not like our 2% properties all of a sudden turned into 3%. They're likely still 2% properties. Heard there's a new Pelletron factory being built north of you in Troy. I don't even know what Pelletron is. Troy, though, is in one of those places that I'm not so sure how much. I'm not so sure. Oh, Peloton is building its first U.S. factory in Ohio. Good for them. Good for them. Oh, Troy Township in Wood County, Ohio. Nope, you were close, man. You were close, but that is not us. That is another. That's another place. These Ohio places, man. They you got to be careful because Troy is a city or town, and it's also a township. There are some other ones that do that. Butler. There's a Butler Township. I mean, we could go on and on. I think Kent is another one. Yeah, there's all sorts of like townships that are different. And I do not think Wood County, I don't even know where that is. Wood County, Ohio. So that's Bowling Green, Ohio. Wood County, Ohio. Yeah, that's near Toledo. So that's way far away. So that will have zero impact. That makes sense, though, because that area, has a lot of kind of deserted manufacturing or factory space, more so than we do, for sure. I think that was more eaten up with the GM than even we were. Because Fuyao Glass came into the old GM, the biggest GM warehouse here in Moraine. But I guess before I did all that research, what I was saying was Troy. I'm not so sure how much Troy would impact the area that we invest in. Troy just seems to be a little bit too far away. It might impact Vandalia, maybe Inglewood or Clayton, but I don't think people don't regularly commute. I'm sure some people do, but I don't know many people that regularly commute to Troy for work. I think it's like 45 minutes to an hour away from here by any reasonable. So I don't think that would have too much impact on us. How do you get the wholesalers? I love this question. This is one of my favorites because if you've been once you get rolling, the question becomes, how do I get these wholesalers away from me? um, I say that kind of joking. A lot of people. One of the things that I say is I very rarely purchased more than one property from any wholesaler. Generally, they come up with like one diamond in the rough, and then they come up with just a bunch of hot garbage. And then a lot of people, hear about wholesaling, watch some YouTube videos, then go out and try to like quote unquote build their buyers list. Now, I always agree, standing rule of mine, always agree to be on everybody's buyers list because you just never know, right? And at the end of the day, all it is just unwanted text messages and emails that you could just sort through on your time. In order to find wholesalers, I would likely just do like a quick Facebook search. Like these people, part of their like an integral part of their business model is building a buyers list. So if you they are actively trying to solicit people that are real estate investors to be on their buyers list so that they can sell any property that they get under contract quicker. So I would say do some Facebook searches for whatever, I'm in Dayton. So if I were trying to do this, I would go to like Dayton real estate investors and I would join all of those groups and let everybody know that, this is my name. This is what I'm looking for. I want to be on your buyers list, and just throw your email out there. Probably create a new email specifically to receive emails like this. If you're uncomfortable giving out your personal email in a whole bunch of Facebook groups. Yeah. So tongue-in-cheek statements about wholesalers, but I am a huge fan of wholesalers, and I have bought a lot of deals from wholesalers. Actually, this property that I'm going to look at later today is from a wholesaler. I got an email on Sunday night saying, hey, I don't know this person. I've never met this person. They just texted me asking me if I wanted to buy a house. And they gave me the address, some pictures, the purchase price, and I said, sure. And then they sent me the contract to assign. And they're making like $10,000 on this. But like I said, $52,000 for a property that doesn't have any deferred maintenance is a great deal. I will happily pay wholesaler fees to people that bring me good deals. And I won't haggle or try to get them to take a couple $1,000s off of their list. So like once people start bringing you good deals, one of the things that I make sure to do is if it's a win, which this property would be a win for me, if it's in the shape that I think it is, just do the right thing by people so that the next time they come across a good deal, you are one of the first people that they think of. Because while everybody else tried to get to reach into their pockets and take their money, I never argued. So just something that I personally do to try to be top of mind and everyone's favorite. It's true. Do you suggest I buy my first property cash and not a mortgage? No. I think leverage is one of the greatest things about real estate investing. Like I think I know leverage is a thing in stocks too, but you know what? I don't know enough about leverage trading in stocks to comment on that or compare it to real estate investing. But I think leverage is truly one of the greatest things in real estate investing. I bought my first duplex in cash, and about 2 years later, whenever we met, because I bought it in an LLC and I didn't want to put it back in my name, we waited probably about 2 years, but then we refinanced it and we were able to pull out. I paid $35,000 for it, and we were able to pull out. I think like right at $54,000. So it was a good investment, and that was the only property that I ever purchased in cash outright without having immediate intentions of refinancing it. So all of our other properties have mortgages on them. And that's the way that I prefer to roll. I think In my opinion, the only time it makes sense to not have mortgages on properties are if you reach a certain income threshold that you're happy with and that you want to sustain for the rest of your life, and you want to slowly start making more money without adding any more problems to your plate. So if you get to like 20 properties, 10 properties, 15, whatever it is, and you say, man, this is a great amount of cash. I could live off of this. I do not want the increased level of difficulty or headache by growing this portfolio anymore. At this point, I want to capitalize on the resources that I have and make the most amount of money out of these properties. Then it would make sense to pay things off and hold those properties free and clear. But if you are wanting to grow and build something massive, then leverage is your friend. So long as you do it responsibly. I have a lot of respect for Dave Ramsey and agree with him in a ton of different avenues. But when it comes to real estate investing on long-term buy and hold properties, I think leverage is really smart. Like Tolu on here, she just bought a property for 155 grand. It's worth 160, so she immediately made $5,000 of equity. Now that's on paper. It's not like she can access it, but she's also going to be paying down a couple of $100 per month in principal. And at the end of the 30-year loan, she's going to have a property that's worth 155,000. So because I'm 30, and because these loans that we're getting are anywhere between 20 and 30 years, it is my belief that the highest and best use of my time right now is going around getting as many mortgages, amortized mortgages, as I can. Because if I just let these mortgages run their natural life cycle, then when I'm 50, 60, I'm still going to be a very young fella. And I'll have a portfolio that is pretty well free and clear. So obviously that could change if we do some cash out refinances to further leverage what we have. But the sentiment is the same. Oh man, I missed a bunch. You guys are really heating up. Thanks. Let's see. Okay, I just answered that one. That was a long question. What 2-bedroom in Maryland is 1,800? Timmy, you're in the wrong place. I tell you what, I used to live in North Carolina, where the sentiment is the same. It would be about that much to rent a house, probably. I don't know anymore. But yeah, I mean, I'm not saying this is the right fit for everybody, but I definitely say that if you are truly interested in getting involved in real estate, but in where you currently live, the entry point is prohibitive to you doing so, man, move somewhere else, even if it's just a little bit. One of the guys in the mastermind group, he is moving from California out to Florida to take advantage of the real estate market. Now, that also had something to do with the fact that because of, again, whatever this economy is going through, his employer allows him to work 100% remote. And he ran it by them, and they didn't have any issue with him moving several states away, so long as he was willing to come back if needed. So he's going to be able to keep his high-paying West Coast income and utilize it to acquire rental properties in Florida. So, I had zero intentions of living in Ohio long-term whenever I got up here. My plan was to come up here, make as much money as I could, and go back to North Carolina. But man, I really fell in love with Ohio because of all the opportunity that's up here. The price of entry is fantastic. The people are great. Neighborhoods are fun. And I'm having the time of my life doing exactly what it is that I'm doing. So I now have zero intention of going back to North Carolina, even though I just said I missed it earlier on the call with Edwin. Oh, same here. My 3 bedrooms are going for $1,300 to $1,375 down here for C neighborhoods. 3 years ago, it was $1,000. Yeah, I mean, Dayton is always going to be pretty far behind Cincinnati. You guys are awesome. What's thoughts about foreclosures in Detroit? I don't know. I'm having so much fun, and there's still so much opportunity. And I've established like a 50 to 60 year plan for for here in Dayton as to what I want to achieve. So I have no interest in like really looking in other markets, and consequently, I haven't really done much research, and I really don't know what's out there. So I know there are a lot of people making money in Detroit, and I also know that there's a lot of people that have lost money in Detroit. And I also know there's a lot of people that don't like Detroit. And I also know there's a lot of people that really love Detroit. You're welcome for that incredibly unhelpful answer. Nice. What's the best real estate to invest in when an investor only wants to approve $60 million or more? You know what, man? If I knew the answer to this, I'd be out there slinging loans for 60 million plus. I'm good friends with a fellow that represents a fund that they don't even look at projects unless they're above 120 million. And I have spent so many sleepless nights trying to figure out because I'm friends with them. So if I could come up with a plan to deploy 120 million, then I could likely have a good foot on the door for approval. And I just have never been able to come up with anything good. I think if you're looking at that dollar range, then new construction, actually like developing, subdivisions is probably a good idea if you're looking for the single family space. Other than that, I mean, hotels, probably good. Storage facilities. No, you're not spending 60 million on a storage facility. That was a bad example. Hotels, new construction, apartment complexes. And then it would just be a matter of, but then you would shift your focus not on, in single families. It's just like, well, what jobs are here? Are people moving in? With both hotels and apartment complexes, you would really need to dial in that research. But that's kind of the avenue or the thought path that I would go down. And hey, man, whenever you get that $60 million loan and you want to throw a measly $2 million at little old Ryan Ingram, hit me up. I'd love to help you figure out how to handle that. Be mindful of older homes, which are plentiful in Detroit. If you see knob and tube wiring, then a gut is needed to take in consideration. Yeah, we spent $12,000 rewiring a house recently. I have a car already paid for. How can I bank to finance it to get the cash out for investment? I'm not so sure I would do that, Tolu. I think that's you could go to like a local credit union and see what they would do for you. That's an option, but I don't know. I don't know if that's something that I would do. I would have to think on that. If you have like a brand new car that's paid for and you were in my market, then maybe you'd be able to get a loan to take out the purchase price of a new property. But for you, I think it would be if you had a brand new car, you would be able to take out enough to maybe be the down payment on a property. But then because your purchase prices are higher and your rents are lower, you would have to factor in, would the rent be able to cover the mortgage, the capital expenditures, the taxes and insurance, and the car payment? Otherwise, you're walking into a deal where you're going to be losing money until you get that car paid off, which I don't think is a good idea. But I'm happy to talk to you about it more. When you win an auction for $101, does all the debt disappear? Yes. Yes, it does. Did you win a property for $101? That's fun. Yeah, this is fun, man. I appreciate Cosmic Wisdom. I appreciate you answering people in here. This is fun. Yeah, that's bananas. I have no idea. I mean, if you've got $60 million on the table and you could show some people some secured funding, you should be able to network with developers and builders pretty quickly. If you're in Maryland, I guess it might be a competitive market, but you should be able to fix that problem pretty well. And I would say, man, I would say be careful. I mean, obviously, with $60 million, you're going to do a lot of due diligence, uh, and I'm pretty excited for you. But definitely, maybe even hire some people to help you do due diligence. $60 million is a lot of money. Is it better to do a 20% down? I don't know. I know a fella that the bank gave him options to like buy down percentage points and monthly payments, and he took him up on that. But it really depends on how the property cash flows and what your expenses are. Which last night I had a conversation with a guy that's developing the app for me, and we are so close. We are about 20 minutes worth of work away from the launch of the Ingram rental calculator. And I am super excited about it. And I'm also going to make a YouTube video explaining how to utilize that app. It's very simple. It is very low key. I did not want something complicated or flashy. This is just bare bones, quick, on the fly, from your car type calculations that you can do to determine whether or not a property is worthwhile. And you are also going to be able to save it, because I found myself doing the same calculation over and over and over again. So I'm very excited. Stay tuned for the Ingram rental calculator. Hello, Karen. I had to do a double take. That picture looks like me when I was a kid. I'm selling my home, closing in 2 weeks for 6.5K, and I'm getting a profit of 360K back. What real estate class training you recommend for me to educate myself as an investor? I am not a fan of spending money on real estate seminars or classes. A lot of those classes or seminars just regurgitate information that if you were just pointed in the right direction by somebody, you could have done all the research by yourself. I get that some people don't necessarily have like the what is it called, like learning style, where they're able to like self-educate very well, and it's very beneficial to sit in like a classroom seminar type circumstance and interact with other people attempting to learn the same material. So if that's you, I'm not trying to defer you, but I definitely want to go ahead and say outright that a lot of these $5,000-$10,000 courses, if you spent a weekend researching, perusing the internet, you can find all the information. It's not going to be presented by somebody with as much charisma or in a binder that looks so well organized, but you'll definitely be able to get the same information. For that thing that you're doing, I would look into 1031 exchanges. I would reach out to a good CPA, and I would talk to them about how to do a 1031 exchange. And then from that, even maybe if it's your personal house, you might not even have to do that. Yeah, I think a CPA would be best to talk to in this situation. I would figure out the capital gain situation if it was a personal residence. And then if there is a substantial capital gains impact, then I would explore the 1031 avenue. And I would figure out how to utilize that money via a 1031 and just roll that tax liability to the future and perhaps beyond. I'm discussing that with someone as I'm not connected with developers and builders besides Maryland. What are the best options? What is the app? Ingram Rental calculator going to be for, please? Just single family homes, just figuring out how, like, what the cash flow of a property is, letting you play around with numbers, capital expenditures, vacancies, repairs, maintenance, all of those things. And really just being able to, so it's two parts. It's going to have like a actual rental calculator, like a full one, where you can actually put in all of the expenses, your mortgage, the insurance, the taxes, how much money you want to set aside for like capital expenditures or whatnot. And then it's also just going to have like a simple loan calculator where you can just, because that's one of the calculations that I do most frequently, is I want to know if I get a bank loan for this amount on these terms, both the years amortized and the percentage rate. What does that amortization look like, and how much will I have paid down in 5, 10 years? So that's going to be an option, and then just like the full blown rental calculator. And then, a little bit about me. It's going to have my face in the app too. So you don't have to wait until Friday to see this smiling face. So when you win an auction, what fees and liens should one watch out for? Taxes. I mean, it's different everywhere, so this is a tough question to answer. But for the most part, I would say, Rick, I missed you. Greetings from America, from Ohio. The International Friday Morning Real Estate Chat. Liens, the title company will take care of those for you. So form a good relationship with the title company. Let them know, like, as soon as you win an auction, take the receipts that you got from the sheriff sale or whatever it is and present those with the title company. They will, in turn, go ahead and do a title search. They will find any and all liens, and you should be afforded the opportunity to reconcile those. The title company should do all the communications with like the sheriff sale and all of the people that actually hold the liens to figure out what needs to happen in order to get those closed out. Generally, in a sheriff sale, the property is like I don't know. It could have been foreclosed on for taxes. It could have been foreclosed on by the bank. Generally, the taxes are brought current at the time of sale. And if they are not, then it should say somewhere in like the description or at the auction that this comes with X number of back taxes, which will need to be paid for. But generally, the whole reason that these things are even foreclosed on are because somebody wasn't paying things appropriately, and that's not necessarily conveyed to you. That's just to get that person who's not being responsible out of the property. And as far as fees go, I mean, it's an auction. You really don't have much control over it. I would just try and make sure that you factor that in, maybe even a higher amount, just to be conservative, so that you can just see the numbers a little bit more appropriately. What type of edification may edify me in due diligence for this deal? I don't know, man. Honestly, I've never done a $60 million deal. Yeah, I've got a, it's called Seek Wisdom Mastermind. That's the website. And then that's my email address. So I would say go ahead and send me an email. I'd be happy to talk to you. But I got to be honest with you, man. My whole portfolio is lesser than $60 million in value. So you are talking about playing at a level that is far above my head. I'd be more than happy to be an ear, and I'd be more than happy to give you any potential insights that I may have. However, you, sir, are executing and playing at a level higher than I ever have. So there is that. But yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk to you. I like stretching my brain and using those muscles. Puzzles are fun. No capital gains. Awesome. Yeah, 1031. 1031 and a CPA. They should be your friend. And then depending on what the CPA says, perhaps it would be advantageous to afterwards get with an attorney, like one of those that like plan like estates, and figure out because that's a sizable amount of money, and presumably you are going to continue doing very well, and you are going to really be on your way to forming an estate that your offspring will be very fortunate to have. So planning your estate early and figuring out what type of like trust structure fits you best. I just recently learned about these things called dynastic trusts, which are designed to be passed down for more than one generation. Now, generally, right around the third generation is generally when everything that you've done has been undone. But just thinking through like with an attorney like that about how to structure everything, how to own your assets, all of that. That's good food for thought. And the earlier on you start planning for things like this, the better off the whole transition will be. So after you get with a CPA and figure out what to do in the short term, definitely then follow up with an attorney, one that specializes in estate planning, and figure out how to perpetuate your successes appropriately upon your children. It felt good saying that. Rolled off the tongue very well. All right. Well, we have reached the bottom of the comments list. I really appreciate you guys. 16 people on for the most part of the chat. That's really encouraging to me. I know I say this often, but I was in college courses that had fewer people in them. So I feel like every time I see a decent sized number like this, 16, I feel really good. I feel like I'm actually standing in the front of a reasonably sized room, having a pretty intimate back and forth in order to help educate each other on the ins and outs of real estate investing. So thank you all for being here. Again, I'm going to wait a couple more minutes, see if there's any more questions. And if not, I'm going to do a good old-fashioned skadoodle or skedaddle, whichever you prefer. Every Friday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I appreciate that, Leon. You're the man. Oh, that's fun. Awesome. Yeah, every Friday morning. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and say, I will see you next week, Friday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard. So thanks, everybody, for being here. And I will see you all next week. Thanks.